I will ask you to please leave the questions for the end. Thank you,
Thank you, Fabiola. Thank you all for coming along today. I really appreciate you taking the time to belong to this session. So thank you very much. I need to start by advance. I have 2 small children, and it's their bedtime here in the UK. It's about 7 p.m. here. So if you hear kind of screaming or howling in the background, that's my kids. So I apologise in advance for that. Good to see that you guys have come along to the it's great to see I'm going to be able to and I provide information to you guys really difficult time for everybody. I have slides here. So I'm going to have a few slides just with general information on the university, but also the we're doing to help COVID-19 for our students. So I wanted to talk through just information about the university. Talk of those and some of our plans for September. So I'll go through that in a moment, but I don't propose take long kind of through these slides because really I'm quite close to London, just 2 hours away by train. We have an international airport, although usually if I'm flying from Mexico, I usually fly into London and just take a train from London, which is just as easy to do, and there's kind of more connections. And in last year's NatWest Student Satisfaction Survey, we were found to be the most affordable UK student city. And that's partly because of the fact that Wales itself, as a UK country, is usually seen to be the cheapest sort of country in the UK to live in. So Cardiff is a very affordable place to come to study in. We're a member of the Russell Group, as I'm sure many of you will know. It's the kind of elite tier of research-led UK universities. It doesn't mean that a university that's not in the Russell Group is not a good university, because there are many good universities outside the Russell Group as well. But certainly, the 24 members of the Russell Group are all considered to be very, very good quality, research-led, high caliber universities. We've just slipped out of the top 150 in the world in the QS rankings, but hoping that will go back up again. And we're 5th in the UK for research quality. Now, it seems a little bit strange that we use 2014 here, but that's because the exercise to measure research quality runs every 6 years in the UK. And we were delighted, so the last one of these was in 2014, and we were delighted to be ranked as 5th in the UK for the quality of our research. We've had Nobel laureate winners at Cardiff, including Nobel Prize winner just about 6 or 7 years ago. And many of our faculties are amongst those sort of top 5 or top 10 in the UK in their particular disciplines. Okay, so I did want to touch on just some of the actions we're taking in light of COVID-19 and some of the steps that the university has taken. Now, this is sort of, actions we've taken to support our current students and our existing enrolled students, but hopefully it gives an indication of, how seriously we have taken the situation. We moved our teaching online very, very rapidly back in March. We're actually quite well known for distance learning in specialist areas like medicine. So it was actually, I'm not saying it was easy, but we were, well prepared to be able to move all of our teaching online. We offered services like storing items for our students if they returned home. We've been calling up our students on a twice-weekly basis, those that have remained in Cardiff, just to check in on them and check on their well-being. We were one of the first universities in the UK to agree that we would refund accommodation for students over the third term of their studies if they weren't here in Cardiff. And our Vice-Chancellor also wrote to all of the kind of private accommodation providers. Sorry, the Vice-Chancellor is like the president of the university. And he wrote to all of the private accommodation providers, encouraging them to also refund Cardiff students who had to return home. And we have an academic policy now of no student disadvantaged. So our existing students, so for example, I'm currently studying a part-time master's at Cardiff, and I have had the benefit of this policy, which is basically it varies in different programs, but it's to ensure that if grades suffer a little bit as a result of COVID-19, that students won't necessarily on their degree classification that they were aiming for beforehand. We made some other pretty big changes, and I know a lot of other universities and a lot of Innova's other partners will have done similar things. Our pre-sessional programs are now online. Our 12-week, our 10-week, and our 8-week English language courses are all delivered fully online for this year only. We've expanded the list of English language programs that we accept. So we now accept Duolingo and the TOEFL Home Edition for this year for both our language courses and our main academic courses. We've pushed all of our master's deposit deadlines back to our main deadline, which is at the end of July. That may be extended further, but we're going to take a call on that in the next few weeks. Certainly, we are saying to students if they have concerns about paying their deposits, we would, we're unlikely to be removing offers anytime soon from applicants who don't pay their deposits, because we understand why applicants might be reluctant to do that in the current circumstances. And we're reassuring as well that, there's a very strong likelihood we would be refunding any deposits paid for students who can't come to the UK because of the COVID situation. And the other thing we're doing is accepting grades awarded by exam boards where exams have been cancelled. So, again, if your university or your school is unable to offer an exam and you're given a grade based on alternative criteria, we will accept that grade just as we would have done had you taken an exam. The other thing we've been doing, and I think this is important, is leveraging our position as a world-leading research university. So, you know, we have a large training hospital at Cardiff, and our colleagues there have been working with patients, you know, providing training on the equipment needed in the health service. The university has donated its own supplies of personal protective equipment to the National Health Service. Our final year medicine students were fast-tracked so that they could be registered and help out on the front line of treating COVID patients. We made a number of our buildings and our laboratories open to health service. For those who don't know, NHS refers to the National Health Service in the UK. And we made a number of our buildings and labs available to their staff. And actually our School of Biosciences is playing a really prominent role in kind of mapping the spread of COVID-19, which is sort of part of a UK-wide project, which is helping us to understand more about the virus and, you know, hopefully play a part in helping to you know, to find a solution to all of the problems that we're facing. So very briefly, our plans for autumn 2020. Now, I have to caveat this by saying any of this could change. You know, should we experience a second spike in COVID infections? You know, should the political situation change? You know, there are all sorts of things that could change to affect these. What won't change is our guiding principle with all of this, which is it's about safety and the health and the well-being of our students, of our staff, and of everybody on our campus, really, and that will remain the same throughout. You know, that will be our main consideration. However, it looks as though our campus will be open in September. For undergraduate programs, we have said we're confident we can invite all of our undergraduate students onto campus. That may be kind of staggered a little bit in terms of start dates, but we should be able to invite them all on. For Masters and PhD students, we're still firming up the details of how it will work. I think it's probably fair to say that both for undergraduate and postgraduate study, there will be a blended approach to learning, which will involve some element of face-to-face contact, socially distanced tutorials, and we're actually kind of repurposing and redeveloping some of our teaching spaces as we speak, really, to try and make that possible. But with larger academic sessions being, you know, moving online, at least for the semester of next year. And we have a digital learning team that is working on, you know, making sure that that works as well as it possibly can for all students, really. You know, we are being very upfront and saying consideration needs to be given to things like field trips and placements. So, you know, if you're coming to study a program that has a field trip or an industrial placement in your first semester or your second semester, you know, that may be something that has to be reconsidered. But, you know, we would always ensure that even if things like that are cancelled, that the opportunity is there to still collect the academic credit for that kind of activity. I don't yet have firm confirmation of how start dates for programs will look for postgraduate students, but I think it's highly likely they will be staggered. So probably most of our programs will stick with a late September, early October start date as they currently have. But, you know, I think it's possible we might see some programs having a slightly later start date, perhaps in November, and we may potentially see some programs offering January start options as well. I think it's likely that will be a limited range of programs, but we're still awaiting final confirmation of that, and we will let all applicants know as soon as we, you know, do have a decision on that. For accommodation, our advice at the moment is, you know, if you want to stay in university accommodation, apply as planned through the normal process. You know, and we will be in touch then with, you know, with updates on parts of the process that may be different this year. But at the moment, our advice is very much apply as planned. I think one of our advantages at Cardiff is we have quite a large campus where we're not actually a campus university, in the sense that we're not just on one plot of land, sort of somewhere on the edge of a city. We're actually kind of in the heart of Cardiff and the heart of the city of Cardiff. And what that means is our estate, our kind of physical environment, is quite large and fairly sort of spread out, really. And so we're pretty well positioned to, to be able to look at things like social distancing measures on campus. Now, that won't be as easy in all of our buildings because we have a lot of kind of traditional old buildings as well that perhaps have less space inside them. But I think our kind of physical estate is, there's quite a lot of outdoor space there. It's quite amenable to, to being able to accommodate large numbers of students without them having to be, physically too close. For PhD students, if you have an offer for a July start on your PhD program, we're advising strongly that you defer that to October, which won't be an issue. We will then advise on, what the approach will be for students coming in October. And actually, I know, for example, students applying for corner seat funding may not get confirmation of that until September. So it may be difficult for them to get to the UK by October. But, in many, if not all of our PhD programs, we have kind of multiple start dates. So, you can, I would imagine that most of our faculty who are supervising PhD students will want to be quite flexible with students who say, look, I can't come in October, but I could potentially come in January. And so, it's important to bear in mind that we have those multiple start dates. Okay, I'm going to finish up here because I'm sure there are other questions and perhaps more detailed questions. But thank you for listening. And I hope that was, I'm very conscious that I don't have every answer yet. I'm pretty confident that I will have, in the coming days and weeks, we will have more information on exactly how courses are going to look and how teaching is going to look. And of course, you as our applicants will be the first to know when that's confirmed. My contact details are here. And of course, I'm really happy to take any questions now as well. So thank you for your time. Hi, sorry, Fabiola, do I need to do anything to open kind of questions up?
Okay, not for the moment. Maybe some of the students are still typing in their questions.
Sure.
So
okay.
Go ahead. If you have any question, please ask it in the chat box. And Patrick will take care of it. I know, Patrick, that a few students do want to know how life is in Cardiff in general. I don't know if you can talk about that a little bit while they think of questions.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. I'm biased. I'm from Cardiff. It's my home city, and I studied at the university as well. But it is, even though I'm biased, it is true that it's a fantastic place to live and to study. One of the reasons I like Cardiff a lot is because as a city, it kind of has a bigger impact than its size. So as I mentioned earlier, really, there are fewer than 500,000 people living in Cardiff. So, compared to London or Mexico City, obviously, it's a small city, And actually, compared to a number of other UK cities, so compared to Manchester or Glasgow or Birmingham, for example, Cardiff is pretty small. But because it's the capital city of Wales, because it's a capital city, it has a buzz that cities of a similar size just don't have. So lots of organisations have a base in Cardiff, lots of campaigning organisations, charities, political bodies, because there's a parliament in Cardiff as well, because it's the capital of Wales. And it means there's lots of kind of arts organisations, very good kind of music scene, creativity is a big part of what goes on in Cardiff, and it's a very sporting city. We have the Principality Stadium, or the Millennium Stadium as it was once known, right in the heart of the city, and some huge global sporting events take place there as well. So it's got a real buzz about it, but without that feeling of living in a big kind of urban environment. You can walk around, from campus to the city centre is a few minutes walk in most cases. It's very, very easy to get from place to place. It's clean and green, and it has got a real buzz. Now, I would be lying if I said that that buzz is not going to be dampened a bit this year. You know, quite clearly in September, you know, it's September, October, when our next intake of students come in, you know, campus perhaps won't be as lively and as buzzy as it normally is in a normal year, but it will still be a great place to be. You know, there'll still be a huge amount going on. It won't be quite the same experience, but it will still be a great experience. And I think, you know, the important thing to sort of bear in mind there really is, you know, yes, of course you can, you know, we've guaranteed that if you want to defer your master's offer, you can do that. And we would never kind of say that you can't do that. But, you know, the likelihood is that potentially next year we'll have a huge sort of number of deferrals, and actually the student experience next year may be quite different to how it is this year. So, you know, we are encouraging students to really consider September 2020 and not to sort of rule out coming to the UK, because, yeah, you know, there's still a great experience to be had. I'm just clicking on the chat box. Okay, so there's a question here about how are MBA programs being planned and which scholarships are available. Okay, so the first question, our MBA has actually been relaunched this year. We used to have a kind of freshers MBA where students could come without prior work experience, and that's actually been changed this year. We've moved towards a more conventional MBA that requires work experience. I don't know whether there will be changes to the start date for the MBA. It hasn't yet been decided, but, well, it may have been decided, but the information hasn't been communicated yet. It's likely within the next few days it will be. So, you know, you will, if you have applied for the MBA or if you have inquired about the program, you'll get an update on that probably in the next couple of days. In terms of scholarships, we have our Vice Chancellor's Scholarship Scheme, which is a £2,000 scholarship scheme for students on a selected range of programs, quite a big number of our academic programs. And the way that scholarship scheme works is you have to meet your entry requirements. So, you know, you have to get what we asked you to get, and as long as you do that and you're on an eligible program, you would get a £2,000 reduction in your tuition fee. I don't think our MBA program is actually on that list because it's quite a specialist kind of program, but we do have the £2,000 scholarships for a big range of other programs. I can see another question, which is a really good question again, about if we decided to stay off campus, how are we going to find a place if I think immediately we need to go into quarantine? And yes, that's absolutely right. We, at the moment, the UK has a policy of requiring 2 weeks of quarantine for anyone coming into the UK from overseas. Now, the first thing to say about that is we don't know whether that policy will still be in place in September, October. I think it's being reviewed every 3 weeks. And I think most observers sort of think it's probably unlikely that it will remain in place for as long as, you know, even the next few months. But obviously we're proceeding on the basis that it will be in place. And we are developing a plan for ensuring that international students can safely quarantine on campus if they need to. Now, in terms of off-campus, you know, if you are looking at sort of private accommodation and non-university accommodation, my understanding would be that you would be responsible for quarantining, but I am sure that the quarantine plans that the university puts into place will include provision for those staying off campus. Now, you would probably need to let us know where you were planning to stay, what your details would be. But it's entirely likely that whatever quarantine, you know, you may not be able to access all of the facilities that we can offer on campus. But, you know, there may well be an element of our quarantine support program that applies to students staying off campus. Again, I have to be completely honest and say we don't have the full details of that scheme yet. So, you know, I can't make any kind of guaranteed assurances on it. But I think, it is important to just bear in mind that, yes, we're preparing for international students to need to quarantine. There is a possibility it won't be needed anyway by September. Let me just see. Okay, here we go. Yep. So there's another really good question about affordability. So the question is, I mentioned Cardiff being quite an affordable city, and the question is around living costs and how much they're likely to be. I've actually just got some information today, just sort of living cost information. Let me just get that for you, in terms of what we estimate for living costs. If you just bear with me a moment. Okay, I can't quite find the precise numbers. What we essentially say is for, if you're an undergraduate student, we normally sort of recommend that you budget about £9,000 to £10,000 for a year of living costs in Cardiff, and that would include accommodation, in university accommodation. For a postgraduate student, we usually give a slightly higher estimate. It's in the region of sort of £11,000 to £12,000. But again, that includes your university accommodation and your bills and everything else on top of that. I do always point out that that's a ballpark figure. There's some students need more than that. Some can get by on less. And of course, there are always opportunities for part-time working as well to kind of top up living costs. In general, Cardiff is an affordable city. I do have to say that, a lot of the cities in the UK are more affordable when compared to London. And that doesn't mean that London's not a brilliant city. It really is. It's a fantastic place, but it is, and it can be and is a lot more expensive. And so, certainly when compared to costs in cities like London, Cardiff, as I say, budget for around sort of £10,000, £11,000, £12,000 for the full year, and that should cover pretty much everything.
Patrick, I have a student who applied from Ecuador, and she actually wasn't able to join the conference because she has a problem with her phone. But she wants to know how are Latin Americans in general treated over there? Like, she doesn't have the experience of being over there, so she would like to know that as well.
That's another really great question. We have a very proactive Latin American Student Society at Cardiff. The president of that society is one of our research students in the School of Engineering. Her name is Edith, and they are one of the most visible student societies on campus. They're not a big society. It's, we don't have huge numbers of students from Latin America. I think it's in the region of sort of 20 to 30 students across, all of the countries of Latin America. But they are very visible, very vocal. They have a huge range of events that they organize, from dancing and cultural and food events, come and sample Latin American cuisine, all these sorts of areas. But they're also very, they run events about like discussions of the political situation in various countries in Latin America, which are really, really interesting. They always invite me along, and I manage to attend sometimes, and they're fascinating sessions. And yeah, it's a very good sort of close-knit society and community of students. We also, most of our students from Latin America, by no means all, but most are studying in kind of engineering or physical sciences type programs as well. And that's really cool because it gives a little bit of that sort of culture, to that that academic faculty as well. So we have, particularly on the academic staff at the School of Engineering, I can think of 3 Mexican academics. We have the guy who, one of the professors who runs our Sustainable Energy Masters Program, Agustin Valera de Medina de Valera. He's Mexican himself, and he always has, you know, a number of Mexican students studying that Sustainable Energy Masters Program as well. So, you know, yes, we don't have huge numbers of Latin American students at Cardiff, but they do kind of have a, you know, a big impact on campus. And actually, you know, just to emphasize as well, and this is not just for Latin American students, this is for all international students. You know, we have a huge range of support services designed specifically for international students, you know, to provide advice and support on anything from, you know, visa questions, finance questions, the academic side of things as well. And that international student support team will be available next year. They will be working. You know, it may be that it's not as easy to get a face-to-face appointment with them, but you know, I'm sure it will be possible to do so over Zoom or over Skype or similar. So you know, those services will be available to students as well. Let me just take a look in the chat box. I think we have a couple more questions. There's a very good one about, yeah, is there an introductory language course to learn Welsh in the university? So I probably should have mentioned in my presentation really that Cardiff University has, Wales has its own language, and you can see it there in our logo underneath Cardiff University on the top left of the slide, Prifysgol Caerdydd, which means Cardiff University. Welsh is spoken by something like 15% of the population of Wales. So, for example, I am Welsh, I'm from Cardiff, I'm not a fluent Welsh speaker. I can speak a little bit, but I'm not fluent. My son, who is 6, goes to a Welsh school, and he is a fluent Welsh speaker because he's, you know, he is taught in Welsh. You do hear Welsh widely spoken. You know, we're very proud of the language, and you'll hear it widely spoken on campus. However, you know, to reassure you as well, you know, everybody speaks English. You know, there's nobody who only speaks Welsh and doesn't speak English. And you know, all of the classes, all of the courses are in English. You just get, you know, if you come to study in Cardiff or anywhere in Wales, you also get the added bonus of, you know, this wonderful culture where there is another language that is thriving and is widely spoken. And the answer to the question is yes, there is. You can, we have a School of Welsh, and they run beginners Welsh courses and intermediate Welsh courses and advanced courses as well. And we absolutely recommend that if our international students are interested in learning a bit of Welsh, they can do so, and they absolutely should. It's a fascinating language. I mean, one example, there is a town, it's a language with, it looks, whilst it uses the English, you know, it uses the alphabet that we all recognize, you know, much as Spanish does, and French and German, but it, you know, it has different vowels and things like that. So there's a town in the north of Wales that is called Llanfair Pwll Gwyngich Oen Drob Llantysilio Goch. And that's the actual, that full word is the name of the town, and it gives an indication of the kind of sound that Welsh makes as well. It's a really interesting, really beautiful language, and we definitely encourage you, if you want to do so, to learn a bit when you're in Cardiff. This same questioner has posted another really good question. What's the best way to get to Cardiff? A plane to London or Manchester and then take a train or bus, or there is a direct Mexico-Cardiff flight? There's not a direct Mexico-Cardiff flight. I wish there was, because I visit Mexico quite regularly, and I'd love it if there was. You can probably fly from Mexico City to Amsterdam, or indeed Paris, and probably change and fly directly into Cardiff from there. That probably, in most cases, would be a little bit more expensive and probably a bit of a longer flight time. That's certainly what I find when I look at flights. I prefer usually to fly to London. I wouldn't fly to Manchester because that's a few hours. You know, it takes about 3 hours to get from Manchester to Cardiff, whereas from London it's more like 2 hours. I usually fly to Heathrow and then take a Heathrow Express train. So you kind of have to connect to London Paddington and then take a Heathrow Express train and then take the train from London Paddington to Cardiff. Now, the other thing I need to mention here is that obviously we have an orientation program for international students, and it's going to be different this year, as everybody's, every university is going to have a different kind of orientation session this year to what usually happens. But what we do in usual years is we bring buses along to the airports, including the airports in London. We pick up students, you register with us in advance, and we will pick you up, get you down to Cardiff, get you into your accommodation, get you all set up with everything you need. We will be having an orientation program this year, absolutely. It may not look exactly as it does. So, for example, it might involve us booking places on an existing coach company, that's traveling between London and Cardiff, rather than, packing everybody into smaller kind of minibuses. But we will be offering options to help get students over to Cardiff from London if you're flying into London. That's yeah, another good question. How cold is the beach in Cardiff, and how is nightlife in Cardiff? Well, Cardiff is on the coast. It's not what you would call a beach city. It used to be one of the world's major ports. Back in the 19th century, at the time of the Industrial Revolution, Cardiff was arguably one of the most important cities in the world because it was a port city, and coal from the South Wales valleys was exported from Cardiff. So whilst it's on the coast, we don't really have a beach. However, not much further along the coast, probably only about half an hour's drive, there are beaches, and certainly once you get over towards Swansea, there are some beaches, really beautiful beaches there as well. How cold? At the moment, it would be beautiful. We're experiencing a fairly unprecedented heat wave in the UK at the moment, so it would be, aside from the COVID restrictions, being on the beach in South Wales at the moment would be a fantastic place to be. If I could change one thing about the UK, I would change the weather. I like warm, moderate, I like the climate in Mexico City, I must admit. And we don't have a climate like that. We have a much more changeable climate. You can have beautiful, warm, sunny days like today, but they could be followed by a few days of rain, and it never, we rarely get extremes. You don't get extremes of heat, you don't get extremes of cold. It's moderate in that sense, but you do get a lot of different kind of weather conditions. So yeah, it depends on the time of year, really. The question on nightlife. Cardiff is a very, very lively city, and there is a huge amount going on. I'm a music fan, and there's a fantastic independent music scene in Cardiff. There are lots of kind of well-known, if you prefer kind of more, big kind of mega club type clubs, we have those as well. It's not London, we don't have that kind of huge, expansive sort of massive nightlife, but it is kind of, quite well known as a, I won't say a party city, but certainly, Cardiff is seen as a destination for a night out, and people come from all over the region and all over the UK, for a night out in Cardiff. Again, I don't want to promise too much, though, in the context of COVID. There will be obvious restrictions on things like nightlife and pubs and even things like cafes, and that will be the case in Cardiff, but it will be the case everywhere else in the UK as well. I think we're hopeful that things will be able to open up a little bit, and certainly by September, October, things like the bar in the Students' Union, will hopefully be able to open with some elements of social distancing. The good thing about Cardiff, because it is quite a green and clean city and quite an expansive sort of city, you might find, I think what we'll probably find in September is, as long as the weather is okay, students might congregate in small groups outside and, perhaps sit out on the lawn and, have a few drinks and enjoy the sunshine. You kind of have to, you have to have sunshine to do that, and I can't guarantee we'll have that, but I think maybe that's how things might pan out initially. But things will reopen, undoubtedly over the course of the year. We'll start to see social venues opening up again. And actually, there's another question coming in here about food as well. What is the traditional food, which is on a similar theme? Wales and Cardiff, we're probably, I'll be honest and say, we're probably not known for our cuisine, in terms of our own traditional food. What I will say is, we do have Welsh traditional food. There's like a cheese and bread dish, and there's things like Welsh lamb, which are, absolutely delicious. What I will say is, and I think I can speak for the, not just for Cardiff, but for UK cities as a whole, is you can get a huge range of really good quality global food in all of the cities of the UK. So, the UK used to be considered a bit, maybe not as having the best food in the world, and I think that's probably a fair criticism, but things have changed a huge amount, and there are certainly in Cardiff, there are places where you can get Latin American food. There's certainly a lot of places where you can get really good South Asian food, or things like Southeast Asian food. There's a bit Italian food. There's a lot that you can access, and some really good quality and fairly cheap options as well. Is the food as good in the UK as it is in Mexico? No, but the food, I've never really been anywhere in the world where the food is as good as Mexico. So, I guess that's, you guys are just very fortunate to have such fantastic food in Mexico.
Great, thank you, Patrick, for that. We do enjoy our food, I have to say. In terms of Latin America as well, we have a person here connected who is from Peru, and they have fantastic food as well. Yes. I don't know if there are any other questions. This is usually not the best time for students because we eat very soon, but we really appreciate you being here, Patrick. Thank you for answering the questions. Thank you for bringing an update regarding coronavirus, which I think is very important to everybody. And we are all hoping that the students will be there this September or October. And you have now Patrick's information if you need to contact him. And of course, you can also contact us in Innova anytime.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And thank you again to all of you for coming along. Just to let you know, if you need to contact me, please do so. I'm really happy to help with any inquiries. I think the email address I've put up there is our kind of general office email address. But if you just mark it for my attention, I can make sure, the team can make sure that inquiry gets to me. And really, it's just to emphasize again, our most important, the thing that's of the most importance to us is the health and safety and well-being of our students, and that will be the guiding principle throughout how we deal with this. And we will get there. These times will pass, and I think really it's just to encourage everybody to continue. I'm not just talking about Cardiff. I'm talking about studying in the UK generally. There are. Hopefully that option will still be available. It'll still be possible to get to the UK, and hopefully as many of you as possible will be able to do that. So thank you again for your time. Yeah, and do speak to me or speak to my colleague, our colleagues at Innova, who will be really happy to help with any other questions.
Great, thank you. So have a very good night, Patrick. Thank you for the time, because I understand it's quite late over there now, but we are also recording this session, so whoever wasn't able to arrive today will have it as well. And those of you who attended, thank you, and we will send the video over to you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabiola. Good to speak to you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.